Hi everybody, welcome back. Today I thought I would start a new series on this channel called Cycles and Stars. I intend for this series to be based around my divinatory practices. So anything from deck reviews to informational videos about my reading style, to video responses, to people in the tarot and divination community. I thought what better way to start out this video series than with a response to KellyBear's 5 tarot decks I can't live without. I have to admit that I took the softer side of the question and went with what 5 decks would I take with me if I was going to go on an extended trip, say for a year or two, and I wouldn't be around my entire collection. In thinking about what decks I wanted to include in my particular list, I was very much inspired by Crystal from PowerFem here on YouTube. I really liked her approach of taking some tried and true decks with you, ones that you know you really get along with and that will read well for you in almost any situation. And then kind of rounding out the list with decks that I really wanted to take the time to learn. So without further ado, let's dive into this list. The first 2 decks on the list are going to be my tried and true trusty tarot friends. These are the decks that consistently give me accurate, juicy, deep readings. The first deck on my list is of course a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. For me, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is the deck that I learned how to read tarot on. It was the only deck that I had for quite a long time until my collection kind of exploded. The particular version that I learned on was the Universal Waite Tarot deck, and that still remains my default Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This is the backing. I'm sure most of my viewers are familiar with this particular deck. I can show you a few of the cards. These won't be a surprise to any of my viewers. They're a very standard image. I like this particular deck for the colors that it uses. The saturation for me is kind of the right amount of saturation in my Rider-Waite-Smith deck. There are of course many versions of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This just happens to be the one I learned on, and so it brings back many memories when I'm doing readings. And I can read with it very readily. I find for me that this particular deck is very good in all kinds of readings, and so I think it's a good tool for me to have with me. It's something I feel comfortable with and can be used for almost any kind of reading that would come my way. The second of my trusty tarot friends that would be coming with me on this journey will be no surprise to anybody that's followed me for any short amount of time as a tarot reader. It may be a little bit of a cheat, given that this particular deck is a combination of a tarot and an oracle deck, but I count it as a tarot deck. I can't really separate the two, although I guess if I'm out for a year, maybe I could find uses for the 2 separate pieces. Without further ado, that is the Cosmos Tarot and Oracle deck. Look at that gilding. It is absolutely gorgeous. And this deck shuffles like a dream. While I'm not always particularly drawn to decks that are put together as art collaboratives that kind of bring together art from many different artists, the Cosmos Tarot and Oracle deck really was love at first sight. I saw the images online and I just had to have it. By the time the package got to me, I was so excited. I think the connection was instantly made, and I've never really turned back. This particular deck reads really, really well for me. It is very deep, and I should do a full review of this at some point. I really enjoy not only the fabulous art, but the very multi-layered meanings of each of the cards. For me, the multi-layered meanings in these cards ensure that the readings that I do with this are always rich and deep and multifaceted. They really do come at readings from many different angles, including the astronomical associations for each card, the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith readings for each card, and of course the art itself, because I'm a very intuitive reader. So I can often pick up on various parts of the art that may not have anything to do with either the astronomical meaning or the traditional meanings of the tarot cards. Overall, a fantastic deck, and I really should do a full review of it sometime so everyone can see it in all of its glory and can hear me gush about it endlessly. Hydration is important. Why don't you take a water break? Okay, now we're going to get into the latter half of this list. There are only 5 decks, so really the latter half is going to be 3. I know that's not necessarily half, but I wasn't going to cut any of my decks in half, so deal with it. So first up in this part of the list, the decks that I would take with me because I really want to take time to delve deep into these decks and learn them, because they are either systems or decks that I have very little experience working with. So the first deck in this part of the list is another Rider-Waite-Smith clone. However, the art style is somewhat unusual and very appealing to me. This is the Ellis deck. This is the back of the deck, and the reason that I really wanted to work with this deck was because I was very drawn to the artwork, the illustration work that is in this deck. It is very graphic, very bold, it uses a lot of bright colors. Like, I mean, come on. You see all these bright colors? So while the system isn't something that I'm unfamiliar with, the art style really does draw me in, and it has some unusual interpretations of the traditional meanings that come up in some of the illustrations. So I think that would be a very fun deck to work with for a year. I have the 3rd edition of the Ellis deck by artist Taylor Ellis. It is a self-published deck, which you can still buy directly from the artist, I believe. I will try to leave links in the description for all the decks that I talk about today, so that if you're interested in checking them out or purchasing them, you can do so. Most of my tarot journey has been focused on the Rider-Waite-Smith system, working a lot with Rider-Waite-Smith clone decks, which are all well and good, but I would very much like to start learning some other systems. In particular, I'm very interested in learning the Thoth Tarot system. While the Thoth Tarot imagery is beautiful, and I am very interested in the Kabbalistic aspects of the Thoth Tarot and how that relates to the readings in that system, I also wanted to be able to use a slightly more modern interpretation of the Thoth system. So for me, the deck that I would bring with me on this particular trip would be the Urban Tarot. The Urban Tarot is a recently released deck. It was funded on Kickstarter, and it's by artist Robin Scott. The cards in this deck include many of the elements found in the original Thoth Tarot, including obviously the numbers and titles. It also includes the keywords that are found in the original Thoth deck. One of the interesting elements that it does include that was not, of course, in the original Thoth are titles on the court card that have to do with occupations that the artist has associated with the personalities inherent in the court card system. That is the Urban Tarot. That would be the Thoth-based deck that I would choose to take with me on a year-long journey to start learning about the system. The imagery is just more appealing to me than the original Thoth, and maybe a little bit less busy. Something I can start out with that's a little bit simpler than the full-fledged Thoth Tarot. So now we've come to the last deck on my list, This is a deck that I am very excited about. This is a very recent release, as in my pre-ordered deck arrived at my house last week. This is the Orbifold Tarot. This is a deck that I've really been looking forward to, and I can't wait to sink my teeth into it. And can we talk about the fact that the edges are already black? I don't have to do anything. It's amazing. As you can see from the cards, this deck is abstract. There are no pictorial representations on any of the cards. They're all made up of these orbs in different configurations, in different colors, both the minor and the major arcana. The focus of this deck really is on both use of elements and how they combine, as well as numerology. That focus on elemental associations and numerology is really what drew me into this deck. Because I'm normally an intuitive reader, I think it'll be very interesting to see spreads like this, made of these cards that have all the abstract representations of the elements and numbers, and really see what elements and numbers stand out in the spread. The Orbifold Tarot comes in this very minimal box with a magnetic enclosure, which I find to be very wonderful. And look at the gorgeous color on the inside. I'd like to read you the saying on the inside of the Orbifold Tarot box, because I think it really encapsulates the reason that I was so drawn to being able to work with this particular deck. Explore the chaotic patterns and rhythms of life's endlessly changing cycles. Short, sweet, and to the point, but more importantly, speaks to the cycles and rhythms that I feel tarot really does a great job of pointing out to us as readers and as human beings. So although I sadly won't be going on a year-long trip, I really hope to be able to work more extensively, especially with these latter three decks over the coming year. As part of that process, I hope to be able to put up somewhat in-depth reviews of each of those three decks after I have a little bit of time to work on them. And some exciting news, at least for those of you that might be interested in the Orbifold Tarot, is that I have a second deck here that I will hopefully be able to run a giveaway for soon. So keep your eye out for some details about that. First, I'd like to thank KellyBear for starting this tag. I really had an enjoyable time seeing everybody's responses to this question of what tarot decks can't I live without. If you're watching this video and this is the first such video you've seen, I'll leave a link to KellyBear's original video in the description box below so you can check out the video that started it all. Then I'd encourage you to scour YouTube for all the response videos to this particular tag. They've all been fantastic and very enlightening. They have all also been very wish list expanding. Just warning you. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. The second deck